Constance Deck here. I want to preface this by saying that this is being done for a discussion forum in one of my classes about the National Environmental Policy Act and our impressions and thoughts about how that act has been working out. The National Environmental Policy Act was created at a time when it was realized that the actions we were taking were destroying the environment around us, an acknowledgement that to not address those things would eventually destroy our world. The act sounds and looks good on paper. The foundation of the purpose to declare a national policy which will encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between man and his environment, to promote efforts which will prevent or eliminate damage to the environment and biosphere, to enrich the understanding of the ecological systems and natural resources important to the nation. Encourage and promote. These are the key words that differentiate this act from other laws. If I were to travel 75 miles an hour in a 55-mile speed limit zone, no matter what the reason, I have to realize that there will be a fine for that action. Although the paperwork in the form of environmental assessments and environmental impact statements with all the mandatory elements, including alternatives and public participation, is a requirement, in the end, the course taken is at the discretion of those in charge. That course could be altered by the public through the courts. Eventually, maybe. That's a big if. The fiasco of the Deepwater Horizon debacle is a prime example of what can happen when encourage and promote environmental quality are ignored. This situation exemplifies how easily it was to bypass or ignore what the act set out to do. Barsa and Dana, in their paper Reconceptualizing NEPA to Avoid the Next Preventable Disaster, 2011, break down step by step all the pitfalls that occurred to create this catastrophic event. Not only the loopholes that occurred on paper, but the ones that happened in person. The Minerals Management Service wrote one EIS for 11 different lease sales, including BP. The EIS itself had so many flaws. Then introduced the idea that no one believed such a disaster could ever possibly happen. Mix in testimony from the person that contributed to the approval of the lease that he had never handled some of the paperwork that would have been necessary to proceed. Then add that drilling plans in the Gulf were categorically exempt from NEPA. The list goes on. Direct quote from the paper. The review process was lax, categorical exclusions proliferated, risks were either ignored or excised from review documents, and permits were approved without the required assurances. It created a recipe that resulted in the destruction of ecosystems that will never, ever be the same. Is this a surprise? No. It appears that there are always ways around everything, and environmental policy is not exempt. While we're talking about the history of NEPA, let's look at the future of the policy. On June 13th, the U.S. Forest Service has entered a proposal to eliminate public participation in most logging, prescribed burning, road and pipeline building, and other forest operations. In addition, it would delete any environmental reviews. The proposal appears to have a direct connection with President Trump's executive order on forest management to increase timber production. Unfortunately, if this is accomplished, other agencies will likely follow suit in eliminating the core foundation of NEPA. If you feel that you need to address the situation, you can comment on the proposal up until August 26th. Barsa and Dana proposed in their paper that NEPA needs a revamping in the opposite direction, one that would tighten the seriousness of the EIS, having a consequence to using the loopholes to bypass requirements. When you lie or leave out key factors on most applications, you are denied service. The leases the oil companies acquire are given in a 50-year holding. Take that carrot away, and they may be more diligent. The rules of the game are in place, or at least at the moment. Those rules need more scrutiny and accountability. If not, it's a waste of time and paper. I would highly recommend taking the time and reading Reconceptualizing NEPA to avoid the next preventable disaster. In addition to the flaws in how NEPA is carried out, there is a discussion on the mentality that allows for blatant disregard for following the rules. What is surprising is the fact that NEPA was enacted 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Acknowledgement was made that our actions were becoming destructive. 50 years later, we're still wrestling with the fact that our actions have consequences. And still, we do not want to let go of the status quo. 50 years from now, will we look at the words written in the purpose statement of the National Environmental Policy Act and wonder why we didn't take it seriously enough?